and welcome back to another episode of the Cardboard Herald, my chance to talk with creative gamers and game creators. I am joined today on the podcast by David, Forest, and Lina Cossette, but you may know them better as Mr. Cuddington. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hey, Jack.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for joining me late in the evening over there on the East Coast in Canada. Or are you actually on the East Coast? Where are you located?
We're located in Quebec, in a small town called Warwick. And
so it's the French-speaking part of Canada.
yeah.
And we used to be living in Montreal, which is a bigger city, but once we started doing our freelance illustration work, we moved to a smaller town. And
It's also easier to have a family there. Like buying a house is easier, stuff like that.
Definitely considerations that you need to make when you're working in the board game biz.
Yeah.
All right, so I found out about you guys through Santorini, which, like most people, I probably assumed that Mr. Cuddington was just one singular dude. And then interviewing Jamie Stegmaier before Charterstone came out, he kind of set me straight and was like, no, it's a duo and their studio name is Mr. Cuddington. So did you guys set out to be as confusing as possible?
Yeah, that was the main goal. Like right now, I feel like it's getting too clear. Maybe we should change our name or something because people start to know us by our names.
But, when we created Mr. Cuddington, we were both having full-time jobs in the animation and video game field. So we wanted to just become one person, become like this entity that would make games and be very awesome at switching styles because we have different approach and we combine our things it's very nice when we can work together on every piece of art. And we want it to be not something that we do, I don't know how to say it, like I don't want our clients to be like, oh, this project I'm doing with Lina and that other project I'm doing with David. We're just always working on everything together.
Yeah. Almost like when we wanted it to feel like we were this one artist that you work with, and we're not a studio. Like we're not ever going to hire people to work for us. We just want to work as a couple on the same games together. So that's why we wanted to have one name we could put on the boxes and that people could recognize. So that's why we came up with the name Mr. Cuddington. I feel sorry now for misrepresenting women. People assume that it's a dude, but I think by now people start to know us. Even though we still write Mr. Cuddington when we can on boxes. I think people who know our work will start to...
Yeah, but as much... I don't really care. I don't think it's really relevant in art. It's fun when we have a lot of women working and it does change something, but I just feel the name fits right with how it started, and it's a bit random, but at the same time we're watching what was it?
The name actually comes from My Name is Earl. I don't know if you know that show.
Yeah.
We're brainstorming for names, and then the credits started to roll, and there was this person, I think it was a producer on the show.
It was Covington.
Yeah, it was Hunter Covington, and we were like, oh, Covington, that's nice. But the name was I think the name was the .com was taken, so we just changed it.
That's funny how much domain names can actually affect things. I started this thing about 2 years ago, and I was trying to figure out names, and originally this was just intended to be a review site, and I was like, okay, how about something that sounds kind of newsy? I'll go with Tribune or Daily or something, and I was like, oh god, I'm not going to be able to do Work Daily for certain, which now it feels like I'm doing Work Daily. But I ended up focusing on the Cardboard Tribune, and that was what it was going to be. And I finally was going to get the domain, and I think something came up that day that was like a stressor or anxiety or something, and then I just went and got the domain and accidentally went with Cardboard Herald, which was one of the other picks. And then I realized later that night, I was like, wait a second, did I get Herald instead of Tribune? And then I was like, you know what? Forget it. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just going to stick with this for a while. And now I'm a couple years later. That's a little bit of TCbH lore or trivia there that I don't think I've ever mentioned, but I love that your name was driven by the lack of availability on the domain name.
Yeah. Yeah, we're joking about this the other day and saying that like in 50 or 100 years, all the names will be taken. So everything will just be a series of numbers or something, or just garbage names that don't mean anything because there'll be nothing left.
For our computer overlords that will be running the planet at that point, they'll be able to manage it no problem.
Exactly.
Well, because you guys want to work as a duo, I'm going to respectfully ask that for the remainder of the podcast that you answer in unison. And if you are unable to do that, then I am going to be very disappointed. You ready for that?
Yes.
Yes.
Close enough. We'll call that good enough. How'd you guys meet? When did you decide to start working together?
Well, we met shortly after school. We both went to the same college, studying in animation. He was studying 3D animation, and I was doing traditional paper-drawn animation. And when we graduated, not so long after that, we met. And we were both having our jobs, but we kind of wanted to have something to do on the computer side by side when we came back from work, because when you draw a lot, it seems to never stop. Even when you're at home, you just want to look at some inspiration and draw some other style that you didn't get to do at work, and we just wanted to have that in common when we came back at home, and we both loved board games. So I think one of our first thing we tried was actually like drawing and designing a board game, which was way too complex.
Yeah,
it was such a big undertaking. It wasn't like such a good idea, but it gave us a lot of themes, ideas, and it gave us the idea to make a portfolio that was oriented for board games, which I think was great when I look back on it.
Yeah, I think the idea of because you want to show publishers that you can do art for board games, but when you start out, you have nothing because you've done no board games. So our approach was just, well, let's just make as many fake board games as we can until and not be too upfront about it, and people would just see that, well, they can do cards, they can do covers and logos and stuff until we start the ball gets rolling and we can do actual games that get published.
I think at this point you need to take some of those concepts for the fake board games that you had and start pitching them to designers to actually create those board games based off of your illustrations. That'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah, it would.
It
would. Well, it's similar. Like the idea of designing our board games came from the fact that we like to invent worlds, and I feel like we're starting to get to a point in our career that we have enough contacts that we can do that. We can create a world and approach designers and say, hey, we'd like to do a board game in that world. Are you interested? And like just the fact that we know people like Jamie Stegmaier and Gavin Brown at Roxley and James Hudson at Druid City, and all these people have become sort of our friends, and they are very approachable now. So that's a big plus for us to explore this avenue.
Oh, don't worry. I got questions about exploring worlds yet to come. But, you guys have done illustrations for so many awesome looking games. And as I mentioned earlier, there's Santorini and Charterstone. And then you mentioned Druid City Games. So we have the freshly funded Tidal Blades. Congratulations on the success of that. What was your big break in the industry?
The first time we felt confident about having this as a full-time job, I think, was with Steampunk Rally. When we finished Steampunk Rally, I was on a maternity leave, and I wasn't sure if I should get back to my job I had before, and we were like, I think it's working. I think we can just move out of Montreal, go to a smaller city, and just do this full time. So I think it was one of the milestones of our career.
Yeah, it was our first Kickstarter, and we didn't quite know what to expect. I actually had done one other Kickstarter for a film project, and we had made $25,000 100,000, and for us it was enormous because we were just asking for 5,000. But like we had no knowledge of what a Kickstarter for board games was like and how much you could expect to do. And Roxley this was their first published game. Well, at least on Kickstarter. I think there was another one before, but just to say that we didn't know what to expect, and it did. I think 240,000, something around that. So that was really impressive for us, and we're like, wow, okay, we can live off that, and it gave us a lot of visibility too. Like people started to contact us a lot more after that, and obviously,
and we developed a trust and a friendship with Gavin, and we knew his company he was envisioning something that would grow bigger and be awesome. So we wanted to be a part of that with him too. Mm-hmm. So
this helped a lot. I mean, it's not easy to depend on many different clients, and even though there are a lot of people contacting you, you still wonder if there's ever going to be a down point where there's nobody. And just knowing Gavin Brown at that time and knowing that he wanted to continue doing games with us, and we really liked the way he was working, it gave us the confidence to do the move forward. And move out of the city and do this full time, and know from that point on that we would not go back to working for another studio and just live off our freelance work.
That's interesting, talking about like people contacting you and seeing what you can depend on. And, you're known. Well, okay, let's go back to the contracting question. So let's say I have a board game and I give you a nutshell pitch of that game. What are the things that you are looking for as these hot artists or hot artist, Mr. Cuddington, because you're a singular entity in this regard? What do you want to know more about that project to understand if it's a project that you want to do, and what would you need to begin work on it?
I'll give you the answer we would have given maybe a year ago, because right now there's some things that are shifting in what we're planning to do for years ahead. But when we were a little bit less busy, I would have said like passion first. If someone wrote to us and was like, this is my passion project, and he was all into it, and we felt like, wow, we were like his first or our first pick for this game, and it was a team that we had never worked on, and it just like seemed very team was important. And also we often get emails that just is a question. I'm contacting many artists. I want to know your rates, which is a bit less interesting than I have a passion project and here's what I like about it and I want you to be a part of it, which was very much nicer to look at. And I think that's how we got involved with Unfair too. Like Joel it was his baby. He was just working on Unfair. It was not his full-time job at the time, and he was paying us to make some illustration, but he had not found a publisher yet, and it was really just a passion project, and it was very inspirational to us too. Same thing for Charlie. We did Kung Fu Zoo, and he was one of our very first clients, and he was just, I think he works in law, and he was working on board games in his spare time, and he just kept coming back to us with little projects, and so that was very motivating. But just to go back to your original question, like this is what we would usually be looking for in projects. Mm-hmm. However, right now, like the past year, we've been just be full busy. Like we can hardly find time for new people coming in because the few publishers we work with, they keep us so busy. And we enjoy working with them so much that it's very, very hard right now to allow anybody to enter the circle, even though we'd like to. We'd like to work on so many projects, but
I'd like there to be like more hours in the day. But it's kind of getting to the point where it's hard to get new clients because we just have those very engaging projects that grow bigger every time we do them with all those friends in the industry. So that's what is getting it a bit harder to work with new people now. But it's not a lack of wanting to do so. It's just it doesn't seem to fit in the schedule.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel bad for telling people, like, we're too busy? I see how passionate you are, but we're too busy. And do you, like, have other friends or other people that you refer them to saying, hey, you know, we're not going to be able to do this, and I know we were your first pick, but you might be able to check out this person or this person?
Yeah, we do. We have, like, we're connected to a bunch of other artists from that we met or just saw that worked on other board games, and we talked with them a bit. So if we feel like one particular artist would be a good pick for this game, we'll definitely be moving them toward that artist. And we do feel bad all the time. You know, we're yes people. We like to be into things and be excited about projects, and so it's always a bummer in our day when we have to say no, sorry.
And I cannot just not go through the PDF or I know I'm gonna have to say no, but I'm still gonna check out like the rules a little bit, and I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm just like looking it through the components and the rules and just saying, that's that kind of game. That's interesting. And I also think it makes for a better email afterward. Just, hey, I've looked at your game. I like this and that. I can't do it, but, you know, I think it's just a warmer email than just, we're not available.
Yeah, it's making a personal connection. I mean, it's not like I'm doing this full time or that, you know, I have some extreme schedule that I got to keep up with. But even in the small capacity of presence in the industry or voice in the industry that I have, I often have interviews booked out for the next 6 weeks or so. I have often a lot of review projects that I'm working on, and I'll have people contact me and say, hey, I just found out about you, and I have this really great game that I'm putting on Kickstarter soon, or even not going through Kickstarter, publishing through other means, and they're wondering if they could squeeze in an interview or something. And if I can't do it, I still want to at least look it over, tell them what I think about it, or give them some sort of platform, you know, hey, you know, maybe we could schedule something for further off. I feel so bad because I got into this mainly because I wanted to just help promote awesome people doing awesome things. And, you know, I'm a creative person at heart, and I like other creative people, and it feels horrible to be like, no, I'm just a little too busy for you right now.
Yeah. Especially since in our case, many of these people that were very passionate about their little prototype and that we helped get this game to a finished product, I've become our friends since. So know that these people contacting us are just like maybe a year late, but if they were there before, maybe right now they would be our friend of ours. You know, it's right. It's just sad because there are too many awesome people in the world. But
I'm hoping that in the future we'll get to do more cons and meet more people in the industry without like actually necessarily working with them, because that's one of I think a good way to just hang out with people in the industry. But right now we have like very young kids, and every time we get invited or we think about going, we're just like, oh wow, it's gonna be
I know that I have a kiddo who's almost 4 years old, and we don't really have a lot of family living near us where we live in Juneau, Alaska. And like, I just went to PAX Unplugged, and not only was it tugging on the heartstrings, being like, oh man, I'm away from my kid for a week at a time, but also I know how much work that is for my wife at home, or if my dad were to hang out with him for a week or so. It makes it tough to have kids and try to attend all these conventions all over the world. But
it does look fun.
Yeah.
And when on the internet, it looks like everybody's going, and I'm just like, oh wow, they're having so much fun. Yeah, in a couple of years.
Yeah, our kids are still pretty young too. We have a 4-year-old daughter,
and a 1.5,
and then 1.5 boy. So yeah, that makes it hard. I think the longest we've been away is maybe 3 days. So, but maybe we'll get to a week. And
I think it's harder too that we both want to go to all the events together. Right. So I cannot just we could, but I would prefer if we could go together than rather than having one of us stay home. So we have to rely on grandparents and everything, and they're not like retired, so they have stuff to do. So it's a bit harder.
Yep. Yeah, I totally get it. With the projects that you're taking on, do you like having more leeway, or do you like really specific direction in the illustrations that you're making? Like, do you like it when someone says, you know what, I love your art style, here's some really basic details about these characters, and go ahead and make 100 illustrations, go buck wild on it, and just ask me any questions you have? Or do you want to know very, very detailed descriptions of their faces, their builds, their clothing, all that kind of stuff?
What I like, it's when, if the client has a very clear idea in his head, I want him to tell me. And if he doesn't, or he's just trusting us with this, it's something I will gladly do, to just imagine all those things. But I would rather have a description if he has one in mind than trying to, draw something, but I didn't have a description and the person was looking for something very particular. So, but overall, I think we prefer a bit to just imagine them and be able to give suggestion. And even try the game too, not just doing illustration, but I just like to have the possibility to try a prototype or, test the game.
Yeah, the thing is, one thing I enjoy working with the same people over and over again is that we feel comfortable to challenge their vision sometimes and sort of question the reasons behind it and argue, are you sure this is the right direction? Look, I'm just going to try something quickly, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. But there's this sort of trust that installs between us that I really like, which doesn't happen as much with new clients, because then it sort of feels like, well, they're asking for this, so I'm not going to challenge it that much. I don't know what all the person is like, or how that person is going to react. But I like to think we're pretty easy to work with. We enjoy both. We like freedom, but sometimes after working on a long project that we had a lot of freedom on, it's nice and easy to just not think too much and just say, well, okay, it's all laid out there. I don't have to think that much, and let's just do it.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine you guys being hard to work with. Like, someone pitches their idea to them and you're like, your idea is garbage. Do you know who I am? I'm Mr. Cuddington, and this is how your game's going to look from now on.
That's a way of not getting paid.
Maybe not big enough to make that call at this point. So Tidal Blades' Kickstarter listed you as doing some of the world building. What's up with that?
What's that? Well, it all started with James Hudson giving us like the most freedom we've ever had, which is just basically created a world from scratch. We could basically create anything we wanted. He just wanted to work with us, and we said, look, we're kind of busy. I don't know how our schedule is going to be like. And he just said, guys, I want to work with you. What motivates you in life? What's your passion? What do you want to do? And we said, well, we're at a point in our life where we'd like to try world building something. And he said, look, I've got a few designs that I quite like right now, and I'm happy to just scrap the team and let you do whatever you want with it. So it sort of started from that point. And
but it wasn't a cooperative work, and it was an exchange too, because when we did the world building, they changed mechanics to go around that, and vice versa. We did change a little things here and there to just accommodate the design too.
Yeah.
And we loved working with Tim and Ben. We've worked with Tim on the Grim Forest, so we already knew him and we had met him, so it was very easy process.
Yeah, it happens too that Tim and Ben Eisner are very good at world building too, and James too. So it started as a challenge for us to world build something, but we ended up working on it all together, and I feel like we had sort of a very similar vision for where we're going. Yeah. So it was a lot easier for us too. And sometimes I don't know, Tim and Ben would come up with some names for locations or challenges, and we'd be like, oh, we really like this one, this one, this one, this one. This one not so much. How about this new title? And that's how we'd come up with all the lore for the world.
That sounds like such an incredible collaborative process, and I'm so happy for you guys that you're able to participate in that and actually realize on that dream of doing some world building. One of the things about the game that caught my eye so much was the color palette initially, those bright and vibrant blues and aquas, and I have to ask, and I'm probably going to be wrong, and it's going to be this build-up that people are going to be like, oh, Jack, why are you so focused on this? But is there any inspiration that was drawn from the PlayStation 1 game Chrono Cross? Like, somehow it just feels like it is an homage to some of the visual tones of that game.
Well, we didn't know that game before. But Christian Kang dropped a comment at some point on Facebook that it looked like Chrono Cross, and then we looked at some references, and I think it might have enhanced it a bit. But overall, the feel we were looking for was, something a bit that looked a bit like Miyazaki's movies. I don't know if you've seen those.
I seen Miyazaki's movies? Come on. We're in the nerd community. If anyone listening to this podcast hasn't watched any Miyazaki movies, then they need to stop listening to this podcast right now. Go and get Princess Mononoke or Spirited Away. I don't know. Which is your favorite? What's the one that people need to check out?
My favorite is Howl's Moving Castle.
I like Spirited Away. It's hard to say. There's Porco Rosso was pretty good too.
My Neighbor Totoro. I mean, come on. There's great stuff out there. I've derailed this enough. As you were saying.
We were trying to make something that would have full colored background with no line art, and with characters that have fine line art that don't have a thick and thin in the lines. Just something that feels a bit Japanese in the design, but not too much. I also have inspiration from, Glen Keane and Disney. So there's a bit of that in the way I draw characters that I cannot get rid of, just like my love for this kind of drawing. So I think it's a bit of a mix there, because Miyazaki's movies have a very distinctive look for characters that we don't actually share on this particular project. But yeah, getting back to the question, Chrono Cross was at the first.
I didn't play Chrono Cross either, so
I didn't know about it.
For me, the biggest inspirations were probably Legends of Zelda and Dragon Ball. But
those are good inspirations.
I don't know, all the arenas, all the square patterns in the stadiums from Dragon Ball, and all the Akira Toriyama and Dragon Ball would do all these little lines of on the characters everywhere, like they're all rugged and they've been fighting hard, and we've really studied all these artists that we admire and just tried to pinpoint exactly what are the things that make this look pretty. And it's not that easy. You really need to analyze these images pretty close and try to replicate them and understand, okay, so how many colors did you use to make that volume, and what colors did you use, and how did you do line work? And
I was going to say, Akira Toriyama, he was the person who did the character design for Chrono Trigger, and I believe the sequel, which was Chrono Cross, as well as the Dragon Warrior games. And that's fascinating that you would reference that. And I actually have been recently watching through Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z again for the first time since I was a teenager, probably like 14 years old. And that was the most surprising thing going back to it, was just how beautifully illustrated, particularly Dragon Ball Z was. You could freeze any frame and it was just so vibrant and evocative and had so much personality imbued into every frame. It truly you could hang up any one of those and it would be a wonderful collector's item, poster, visual presentation on the wall.
Yeah, and I really admire the world building it did. When you think of Dragon Ball, you usually think about people fighting and killing epic fights, like basically. But when you start looking at those, at any pictures of it and study the architecture, and you can recognize any city shot from Dragon Ball because there are these very distinctive dome-like buildings.
I also love the work he did on vehicles. Like we knew we wanted to have watercraft, and it was so important to us. And at first, I don't think James was super on board with it, but we kept pushing. We were like, no, it's gonna be just like jet skis and stuff like that. Because I was just looking at all his designs for vehicles on Dragon Balls and everything else he did, and I was just amazed by all the little details and things that we could incorporate in another world that we would build. So yeah,
you guys are known for this really wonderful, vibrant illustrations that feature adorable characters, though you manage to imbue so much expressive personality into them, like adorably furious, adorably sad, adorably seductive. But at the same time, particularly like Title Blades, it seems like you're kind of going out of what I would have expected out of Mr. Cuddington's style. Do you ever feel pigeonholed or like approaching producers and publishers are expecting something out of you that you feel kind of bored by at this point? Do you look for ways of challenging yourselves?
We always do, and I think the fact that we have pretty much working with the same clients over and over, they give us their trust in doing something else. I think the most different game we worked on was Brass. Like it was very different from everything very colorful we did before. It was very gritty, dark, and we used like nothing was the same. We were working with
just to remind you, we were coming from Santorini onto Brass. It was the biggest step you could ever take on changing art styles.
Yeah, and we had some kind of pressure because we went on BGG, and at some point they announced that we were gonna work on Brass, and some people were so disappointed. They were like, oh my god, they worked like on Steampunk Rally and on Santorini. Brass is gonna look like so childish and it's gonna be crap. And I was like, oh my god, we gotta pull this off or people are gonna be mad because it's already a game that people enjoy. There's a huge fandom. So we felt like it was a great challenge for us, and it looked pretty neat. I think it
looked incredible. You guys nailed it. Like it's as you said, about as far of a jump from Santorini as you could, and they're both respectively beautiful in their own ways. But that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that if a company can announce that Mr. Cuddington is doing the artwork for this game and people are like, oh my god, that's horrible, they're wrong for this game, that's disappointing, and why we can't have nice things as a culture. That there are people who could think that way because they are pigeonholing you into one style and expecting something. So that's great that you're able to get the trust of the publishers to diversify your output.
Because I think at that point we had not proven ourselves. I think that now when somebody says that we are working on something, nobody expects anything from us, very specific look, or I don't think so.
Yeah, but I guess our trademark would be that the game is probably going to end up looking pretty good looking.
You guys can be modest. A game you work on is going to look freaking fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah. So
I don't feel like any of our clients we're working with are trying to pigeonhole us, but the thing I would say is when we have a game coming out, we have a lot of requests for the same style afterwards, but we normally don't end up taking those games. But, after people received Brass, we had a lot of, messages about, I would like to do something Victorian era, gritty and dark. And I feel like we have already done it. So there's no there's no like valid point for us to do it over and over again. But
it's a bit part of the reason why we wanted to do Tidal Blades in the first place and do something very colorful, because we were coming from brass, and all it was super fun. It was also very gritty and realistic, and there were barely any colors in it. So we just wanted to challenge ourselves and do something that was the complete opposite. And I guess when Tidal Blades is over, like right now, there's still part 2 to do and some other things. But when this is over, I have no idea what direction we want to go.
But I'll expect it's going to be different from Tidal Blades 2. So I don't know where we're going to go from there. But, you know, it was such a great thing to be just given the opportunity to think something out of nowhere, and knowing that there would be 2 games in the same universe and the second one would be a dungeon crawler. I kind of wanted Tidal Blade to be so colorful, because I wanted to have like a big dungeon crawler like on a beach.
Not in a dungeon. I don't even know why we're calling it a dungeon crawler. It should be a beach crawler.
Yeah.
Just be a new
beachcomber.
So I wanted to make like the opposite, like just so many colors, so vibrant, and yet there's going to be monsters and everything. But it, like Zelda has proven us that you don't need to just have gray or dark monsters for them to feel like epic or awesome. You can have them being like purple and pink and have weird eyes and colorful designs, and they're gonna be just as awesome too. So that's something I want to try for the next game on Tidal Blades.
Yeah.
As far as the day-to-day, what is the actual hardest part of your job?
The hardest part for this last year, it's been keeping a balance with our family, just not working too much.
Yeah, we work from home, and the attic of our house has been redone to be our studio. So our kind of imaginary line is like we go downstairs and it's normal life, but we kind of always bring work downstairs and we just speak about it almost all the time. And we don't have coworkers almost, so we speak about mostly work. And yeah, I think it's just like it's a whole thing that never really stops. And we had commit to a bit too much things because we were excited about projects. So we've been overworking last year, and our son was a bit difficult, so it was way more challenging than I thought it would. We didn't sleep for the first 11 months, so that plus work plus just overtime at night was a bit hard. But
I'm expecting the next year to be a lot smoother on that front. We learned some lessons from our mistakes too, and we're trying not to overbook things too far in advance too, because we know from experience that things never end up as you thought they would, and there are always some delays. And so that's why it doesn't make sense anymore for us to just say, okay, we'll do that in a year, because a year from now, I have literally no idea how much more work will have been added to our plate from urgent things that we just can't say no to. So
yeah. And Kickstarter, they add a lot of unexpected workload that we can't just create it's hard for us to just say, okay, we expect there will be 50 more cards in that game, but maybe just 10, or maybe, I don't know.
Maybe 50 or...
Yeah, I know. So that's a bit hard to plan. So we're trying not to plan as much as we did originally. So we're trying to just keep our enthusiasm a bit down and just not accept too much project at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys divide up your work? I mean, what roles do each of you have on a given project? Do you kind of elect one of you to be the lead character designer? Do you do it entirely by committee, the two of you taking cracks at something? What does it actually look like game by game?
Yeah, so I'm the overload, and I just sit back and just let her do everything. And
when we don't have too much work, we normally work on every piece of art, like both of us, but not at the same time because it's not possible. But I would I don't know, make a sketch, and he would give me comments on that. I would iterate, and then I would give it to him. He would add details. We would send that pretty good sketch to a publisher, and he would get us comments, and after that either one of us would work on that piece again. So it's really not a clear line of he does this and I do that, but we do have like David prefers a little bit to work on backgrounds and
mechanical things and rendering, lighting.
I think the fact that he did 3D before also helps us with things that I just cannot do, because sometimes we use 3D in illustration, and sometimes David does animation for like Kickstarter videos and other things like that I just can't do. I can do animation, but 2D, like, so it's a bit different. And I have a small preference for character design, but you know, every time we do something, we gotta agree on everything so that it gets out of here and into the publisher's side.
I think the thing that works really well with the way we're working is that we have a very little sense of ego. Like I don't care if she goes over my drawing, if it makes it better. And I'm gonna feel equally proud of the end product if both of us worked on it, or if I did it myself. So in that sense, it's really a collaborative process all the way through. If she looks at my screen and can pinpoint what doesn't work, she'll tell me. But sometimes she can't. She just say, something doesn't work, but I can't tell you what it is. So just let me open it on my computer and I'll try some stuff. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. And I just let her do her stuff. And
I think that's great, because before we send it to publishers, we have someone that has a fresh look, or at least a couple of hours that he didn't work on it, and he can look back, or he can look back on my drawing, or I can look on his and be like, oh, now that I look at it, I see the thing that's not working. And I would not do this alone, like working alone at home. And I think it would be harder not to have that other person there to have a fresh look on everything we do.
If there's one thing that I know, it's that creative people, or artists specifically, can be super self-critical. And even though people may shower you with praise, saying these are some of the most amazing illustrations in the world, that you are probably looking at your illustrations as you're making them and going like, I wish I could draw hands better. Or, you know, like, oh, I hate doing this type of thing. You still do it and it looks amazing to the outside world, but you know that there was something that you wish you could really improve. Is there anything specifically like that with you?
Oh yes, so many things. For me, I'm so bad at anatomy. I need so many things. Lina is much better than me at that, but every time I need to draw anything, I need to dig up so many references, and I can't draw this all from my head. So it takes a lot more time, but at the same time,
I think people are overestimating what we can do from our heads. Like, I think research is such an important thing, and I think the more we've set ourselves for challenges and things that we're not, I almost always feel inadequate, but at the same time, I feel that I'm learning a lot, because every project is very different. And I always, before Tidal Blades, I was just, during the art phase, before we just shown it to James, I was like, I'm not sure. I like the look. It's nice, but I'm not sure I'm not going to be able to work on it. Like, I've done that one illustration that I like, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it again. And I don't know that style. So everything is I always feel like I'm learning a lot. And I always feel like there's so many good artists that already do that style very well. So it's hard to just...
Yeah, that's the thing that's hard about changing styles constantly, is that people are going to compare it to other people that maybe do only that style. So it takes a lot of work to get to that level of they can be comparable in levels. But that's maybe the first time that we ever attempt working in that style. But as Lina said, we constantly learn new things, and I'm surprised by how much some random skill I learned on one project has given me a new way to approach a problem in another style. And I find that, this technique that I learned with this style works very well if I just adjust it a little bit for this one. So that makes our days fun and unpredictable, I guess.
Well, let's take it out with two kind of more fun questions here. And let's start with this one, which is something that I actually asked Kwanchai Moria when he came on the show too. If you could do the artwork for a new collector's edition of any one game, it can be a brand new game, it can be an old game, it can be an ancient game, and whatever that you feel is just something that you would love to work on, what game would it be?
Well, my favorite game is Innovation by Carl Chuddick. I don't know if you know it.
Oh, yeah.
And I find the art lacking in that game, and I would love like the most deluxe edition of it, because I love to play it so much, and it just doesn't look that good.
It's a bit like the same designer did Impulse too, and our version, I know there's been another Kickstarter with another visual, but the one we have is, I mean, it looks okay, but it's mostly UI, and there's not much illustration, and you don't really feel like you're in outer space with your little spaceships. So that would be a good one. And the purple one,
which one?
The Castle of Burgundy.
Castle of Burgundy.
Oh man, you guys doing Castles of Burgundy would be amazing. And that game needs a visual overhaul for sure.
Yeah, this one is a bit beige, and I think it would like need some work. Maybe even just switching theme a little bit. I don't know.
It's a pretty overused theme, if you ask me. Like just standard medieval things, but
is it medieval? It's like cool and.
But it's still castles and.
Renaissance. I would call it Renaissance.
Yeah.
All right, let's end with another hypothetical here. You two, and then Kwanchai Moria, Beth Sobel, and Vincent Dutrait were all hanging out in a room, and for all I know, this has actually already happened, and if it hasn't, it needs to happen. But
they are right now.
They're in the back? All right, bring them on the show. That's great. You're all hanging out in a room. What would you two most want to talk to them about?
Oh my god.
I don't know.
Well, Beth Sobel is great. Ayan O'Toole. We have the chance to talk a bit with Kwanchai, Ayan, and Beth already, because we share like a Slack channel. But Vincent Dutrait is like one of the artists that I would love to just pick his brain and be able to see him work. I don't know. I don't think he would be at ease with that, maybe. Just be over his shoulder and be like, that's how you do that. That'd be great. There's also a couple of French illustrators that I find great, like Xavier Colette, who did Abyss. And there was Biboun, who did Christophe Fossard, who did the dice that you can clip new faces on it. Dice Forge.
Yeah.
Like his art too. The one who did Jamaica was pretty good too.
Mathieu Layssen?
Mathieu Layssen.
Well, while we're listing French artists, I mean, of course, we got to mention Tignou, but, of course, he passed away. But what an incredible game and incredible artistic career that he left behind, for the world to appreciate. Man, French artwork is so incredibly cool, especially French cartooning. I don't know. I grew up on Asterix comics because I was overseas, and so I had tons of Asterix in my life way before I was into like X-Men and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's very different, like the Belge.
Yeah, you were asking if we ever doubt our skills. Well, every time we look at any French artist, we do. On such another level, I feel like we have the chance to be in sort of a unique spot where we're in America.
We're in Canada, but a lot of people in Quebec buy games that are from French companies, and because they're already coming with the French translation. So a lot of the game we worked on don't get made in French, so we don't see them here, except for Santorini, who has a like multi-language version on it. But so I see a lot of French product in my surroundings when I go to shop, and I see a bit less of the United States products. I see them through Kickstarters and other things, but a bit less so.
Even when we were doing animation, I don't know if you know that school Gobelin. The students that go there and the short films that get produced through that school are so amazing. And every year, when we were still at school, we would watch these and get so inspired for our own graduation short film. So, French artists, pretty big inspiration in our life.
All right, we need to connect you with Bruno Catala, Bruno Fiduti. We need to have all of the French designers come knocking on your door, so that way we can get some hot French games with Mr. Cuddington artwork. I mean, if you guys ever had the schedule to allow them into your life. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on the show so much. What are some upcoming projects where people can find your stuff, or some recently released stuff? What's the best examples of the latest and greatest from Mr. Cuddington?
I think it's not been... There's rumors about it. Roxley,
Yes, so Roxley is going to release a new game in the Steampunk Rally universe, sort of a sequel.
And I really think that game went like under the radar at some point, and it's a great game. I love playing it. I think it's a very fun game. So I'm glad there's something else made with that world.
So it should be early 2019. There's also... Aradia from Cody Miller that did Xaya. So it's his new co-op adventure game set in a sort of a Lord of the Rings fantasy universe. And so that should come out hopefully early 2019. I think those are the next two that are going to come out.
A smaller game is Grim Masquerade we're working on right now.
Yeah,
it's a deduction game set in the universe of Grim Forest, but we took the permission to just jazz it a little bit with the art style. It's similar, but we did use some new brushes, and we were excited about it. And what's coming next? A couple of things we can share.
There's one big project we're doing with Roxley next year that we haven't announced yet, but what we're super excited about, and we'll probably start talking about it in a couple months. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, you guys weren't kidding about being busy. You got all the things that you're working on. Hands in many pies. Well, I would love to pick your guys' brains more about all kinds of stuff, particularly the more practical day-to-day stuff, how you approach things, how you handle your day-to-day workload, that kind of stuff. But we'll have to save that for the next interview. For now, David, Lina, thank you so much for coming on to the Cardboard Herald. This has been a blast.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you for listening to the Cardboard Herald. As always, everything we do is ad-free and audience-supported. If you'd like to help keep it that way, find the Patreon link at the top of our webpage, cardboardherald.com. We have several levels of support with various rewards. If you enjoyed the show, we do a whole bunch of other stuff, including reviews, interviews, and recommendations across writing, podcasts, and video. You can find that on our YouTube channel or by visiting any of our social media or our website. So with that out of the way, thank you again for listening to the Cardboard Herald.